My brother tries to reveal my secret to our parents, but he has no clue it's all part of a plan I've been building since childhood. Growing up, my family didn't have much. We lived in a small room in a creepy neighborhood where we would have to be careful walking down the streets, especially at night. Mom used to work small jobs, and Dad used to be a bouncer. We went through a lot as a family. Slowly, as time went on, Mom managed to put herself through school and get a better, more stable job. She then helped Dad complete his education too. We were in elementary school back then, so our education didn't cost as much as if we were in public school. It was basically free, except for a few costs here and there. Our parents depended on each other for support, and that's how we survived as a family. As time went on, Dad landed a good position too. Mom took out a loan and put herself through university. By then we had moved through quite a few apartments. Neither of them were very big, but this recent one was comfortable. I was very inspired by how both my parents loved and supported each other. They helped build each other up, and I wanted to make them proud too. I got a job as soon as I was eligible for one, which was around 14. Though I wanted to help out with the house, my parents said no and instead helped me open a bank account. My brother started working 2 years after me, as he was younger than me, but whereas I saved my money, he didn't save his. He instead wasted his money on shoes, trendy clothes, and other stuff. When I was around 16, I started giving tuition for English, math, and a few other subjects. I got paid well from them and deposited that money into my account. I slowly started investing in fixed deposits. Side by side, I started freelancing and writing articles. As I was completing school, I applied to a few universities. I had hoped to get in with a full scholarship, and I did. I still kept working, though. My parents had asked my brother if he wanted to open a bank account. He didn't care much for it. As I was going through university, he was completing school. We had become quite distant, as I was always busy with studies or work, and he was busy with his stuff. I was in my last year of university and had come back home. My parents had moved again, and this time it was a way bigger house. After Mom, Dad put himself through university too, and both of them were saving and investing money smartly in order to buy a house. This house was a big one. My parents had made it and achieved their dream. I was so happy for them, but my brother, on the other hand, took everything for granted. I don't know if it was because of the age gap, which wasn't much, just 2 years, or because I had seen my parents struggling and remembered it, and he didn't. My relationship with him had become very estranged. I tried talking to him, but he would just ignore me. As I was settling into my new room for the holidays, I was very happy. I didn't have much to unpack, and I didn't mind it. My room was very minimalistic in nature. I guess the dorms had rubbed off on me. One day, I decided to go to the bank and change a few things. I had taken advice from my parents on a few financially related things. When I got back home, I kept my bag on the table in my room and went back down to the kitchen to grab a snack. When I came back up, surprisingly, there stood my brother in my room, hovering over the table. I said hi and asked what he was doing in here. He jumped, startled. He turned around with my bank book in his hand. He stared at me for a second and just smirked. While trying to grab my bank book, I shouted at him and asking him what he was doing going through my bag. I didn't like people rummaging through my things, and he had no right to either. He kept my passbook out of my reach, as he was taller than me. He said, "Let's talk," and then he would give it back to me. I said, "Fine." I asked him why he was going through my bag. He then said that it was none of my business and that this house was his. I laughed at him and said that our parents had bought this house with their hard-earned money. He had no claim on it. He frowned at me and said that I didn't either. I told him straight out that in a few years, I could own my own house if I wanted. It pissed him off. He then went on to accuse me, saying that I'd been stealing money from our parents and that we had gone through such rough times and I hadn't helped out. He continued, saying that Mother and Father are going to be shocked knowing how much money I had hidden in my bank account and how cruel it was of me not to contribute to the house. I was stunned for a good minute. This boy who stood in front of me had spent all his money on shoes and other material things to look good in front of his friends. He who hadn't saved a penny in his life was lecturing me about contributing to the house and about my so-called cruelty? His pampered butt needed to be spanked. I decided not to say anything about our parents knowing about my account details since he was digging his own grave by continuing to accuse me. I let him dig deeper. I stopped his rant and asked him what he had contributed to the house. I calmly told him that he had worked too. Where was his money? I told him that he had no right to accuse me of any of his cruel accusations while his butt was carried on and fed by our parents right up to this day. While he stood there in shock, I grabbed my passbook out of his hands and told him to get out of my room. He snapped out of it and threatened to tell our parents about my bank account. He was trying to make me sweat. I just raised my eyebrows at him and told him to go ahead. He was surprised and started yapping again, threatening to spill my secret, and I grabbed him with all my force and pushed him towards the door. When he was finally outside, I shut the door on his face. I didn't slam it, though I was tempted. I'm just not that type of person. He eventually went back to his room and slammed the door. When my parents got back from work, he was the first to rush down and demand that they listen to him. I went down too and hugged them. They asked him what was wrong because he was so frustrated, and apparently he had been messaging them since this afternoon, telling them to rush back home and that he had found out a big secret of mine. He then had the audacity to give me one last chance to confess, and I just rolled my eyes at him and sat on the couch. He then burst out with his story, calling me all sorts of names and telling them about how cruel and selfish I was, blah blah blah. I just took a deep breath and let him continue. My parents sat there in shock. After he was done, I told them that he went through my bag while I was in the kitchen, and when I found him, he said all types of cheap and cruel things to me. Mom and Dad were furious with him while he was waiting for them to burst out on me. He wasn't expecting their sudden and well-deserved downpour on him. They told him that they knew about the bank account and that they had helped me open it. They continued on, asking him how he dared use that type of tone with me and where he had learned those words. They had never taught him to go through other people's things or accuse others. They were very angry and disappointed by his behavior and were really trying to control themselves. They told me to go back to my room and gave me an apologetic look, saying that they needed to talk to him alone. I told them that it was what he said when I found him in my room. My brother paled and my parents were shocked. I went back up. I knew it was petty of me, but he really needed to be put in his place. He was being a brat and he needed to learn a lesson. I mean, I wasn't even trying. He was basically freeloading at our parents' house just because they didn't say anything. I understand them, though. We didn't have the best childhood growing up, and now they wish to make up for it, but taking advantage of that is just brutal. They weren't bad parents, they were in fact very good parents. We never saw them fight. Even if they were frustrated, they never took it out on us. They tried their best back then, they just didn't have enough money. Update 1. I know most of you want to know what Mom and Dad said to him, but I couldn't really hear much other than muffled voices. What I do know is that they demanded that he get into a university or go to a community college and then apply for university. They also set a curfew for him, no late-night parties, no late-night chilling with the boys. They told him to find a better job and to also start helping out with the bills since he stays here rent-free and he's over 18. Just to put more pressure on him, I gave Mom maintenance money for the month. She declined, but I insisted. She just told me to deposit it into my bank account, saying that I'm only home for a few weeks. Update 2. I've gone back to university now. Before I left, my brother managed to apologize to me and say that he shouldn't have said those things. Honestly, I was a little hurt, maybe more than a little hurt, by his accusations. Hence, I wanted him to learn the lesson, but I didn't show it. I think I was more hurt by the way he thought about me. I mean, I had started saving money since I could work. I hadn't spent a cent from there except for food. I had worked for it. I didn't accept his apology, though. I told him to get into college and that I would take my time to calm down. NTA, not the a-hole. OP original poster worked for everything. The brother is TA the a-hole. NTA. OP seems like she genuinely cares about her parents. Her brother's attitude needs to change, though, and seriously going through OP stuff? He is the a-hole here. Both of you have really good parents. I wish mine were like yours. Your brother has a lot of growing up to do. About a year ago, my wife, Anna, 60, female of 25 years, passed away. 8 months after being diagnosed with cancer. Besides our 25-year-old son, Andrew, she also had 3 other children, Allison, 42, Barbara, 40, Caleb, 39, male, from a prior marriage. Their father was never really around, so I, 52, male, have raised them as my own basically ever since I married their mom. Anna's cancer was very difficult for me financially, and I wound up having to downgrade my car to pay for medical bills and make withdrawals from my 401k and take on a lot of debt. Shortly after Anna died, I met another woman, Beth, 49, female, who I have since married. Given that we're living together in Beth's house, selling Anna's house made a lot of sense. When we were packing up the house, I asked Anna's kids if they wanted anything, and they said they didn't. I invested a large amount of money renovating the house and getting it ready to sell, and eventually found a house flipping company that would take it on. On the day of the closing, I was surprised to find out that Allison had sent an email to the lending company telling them that she had been reading up on state law, and that since Anna's kids weren't mine, they were entitled to the portion she would have gotten from the sale. Turns out, she was right. I feel like Anna's children deliberately chose to kneecap me, but they're insisting that Allison didn't know what was going on and was just asking questions. I should have been able to take the money Andrew and I had saved up and start a new life, but now I'm probably going to have to sell the new motorcycle I just bought and have long wanted. And I'm not going to be able to get myself out of debt. This was supposed to be a fresh start for me, and now I'm stuck with the same old problems I've always had. The day of the eventual closing, I was still extremely upset, so when I woke up for work, I texted Allison, Barbara, and Caleb and let them know that I'd also been doing my own reading about our state's laws, and it turns out I'm not actually their father and they should work on their relationship with the person who actually is. I also told them they were no longer welcome at my wedding, which was the next weekend. Upon finding out I had said that, Andrew was extremely upset with me. We met for lunch the following day, and I asked him to be my best man, but he told me that unless I apologized to his siblings, he didn't want to attend my wedding. I was hoping he'd get over it, but he hasn't talked to me since, saying that he's too old to be a 25-year-old child of divorce, and that he was offended that I got married the weekend after the anniversary of his mom's funeral. To me, the date isn't particularly meaningful since the date that weighs on my heart is the one that she actually died on. Beth thinks I should just swallow my pride and apologize so that Andrew will talk to me again, but I can't help but feel hard done by here. YTA, you're the a-hole. First, you totally ignore the fact that Anna's kids would be entitled to an inheritance from their mother. Second, you had a petulant toddler tantrum over having to sell your motorbike, which was an unwise purchase because you had to know about number one. Third, you retaliated against your stepchildren, for whom you were the sole father figure, by hurting their feelings and basically disowning them because they had the nerve to want the inheritance from their mother to which they were clearly entitled. I get that you went through a very difficult time, but so did your children, all of them. It's not just the op show. No wonder your bio son is angry. So, let me see if I understand this. You, perhaps inadvertently, were going to cheat your stepkids out of their legally required inheritance. They discovered this and started asking questions regarding what was legally owed to them. Instead of being grateful that they caught this before you went any further with this and wound up owing them interest and penalties, you got mad at them and cut them off as your children barely a year after they lost their mother. YTA, and I suppose it's good that your state made sure they were protected from a vindictive father figure like you. All of this is made worse by the fact that you and your late wife had over 2 decades of irresponsibility in declining to figure out your finances and wills. You had an obligation to all of your children to figure out the finances of a blended family, particularly since most jurisdictions treat biological children and stepchildren differently. I try not to judge, but how do you supposedly love someone for 25 years and end up in a relationship with someone else shortly after they die? I think I've mourned my dog for longer than a lot of these people mourn their significant others. Just yikes. The fact that your bio son wants nothing to do with you due to your behavior tells you everything you want to. No. You went from having 4 children to no children at all. Thank God you have a new wife to replace them. So, I, 43, male, have a fiancé, 49, female, and I also have a daughter, 16, female, and the 3 of us traveled to visit my fiancé's parents to have them meet us. Last night we got a hotel for the last night before we drove home, and my fiancé and I were in the master bed, and my daughter was in the pull-out couch bed in the next room. And shortly after we went to sleep, my daughter asked if she could sleep in my bed with me. My daughter is on the spectrum and has anxiety from previous trauma and has some trouble with being alone in unfamiliar places. So I said absolutely, and I initially offered to go sleep on the pull-out couch with her, but she said it was very uncomfortable and she needed to sleep on a real mattress. I asked my fiancé if she'd be willing to sleep on the pull-out couch for the night, and she seemed a little annoyed. I offered to get another room for us or to figure something else out, but she insisted it was okay. So, my daughter and I shared the master bed, and my fiancé slept on the pull-out couch. Today, we got home, and she seemed kind of passive-aggressive with me, and when I asked what was wrong, she said she felt completely sidelined and like she was treated with no respect or decency last night. I told her I was sorry, but my daughter was in distress and I needed to do something, and she insisted she's not a little kid and could have done something else that didn't involve sleeping in my bed with me. Then I told her she was starting to get out of line and she needs to understand I have an autistic daughter, so if we're going to be together, she needs to understand stuff like this will happen from time to time. She got very annoyed with me and then walked off. ETA, edited to add, something I should have mentioned in the post is that we did talk about it, and she said she'd sleep on the couch. We talked about it this morning, and she said she didn't want to come between us, so she'd sleep on the couch but bit off more than she could chew. But in hindsight, yeah, it wasn't cool of me to not get 2 beds. I'm not going to claim for YTA, but I do think you're more at fault than you realize. 2 beds should have always been available. Moving forward, I think a lot of this was probably because the bed was more comfortable. Autism does come with sensory things too. Hi, I'm on the spectrum, so while I'm not saying that was for manipulation, there was some. Her main interest was probably comfort, but she didn't want to start with that excuse because it does come off selfish. Moving forward, don't put yourself in a position to have this happen again. Always have 2 beds, and kudos to your fiancé for not saying everything she was thinking because I promise you empathy helped her maintain. I'm going to go with YTA. Here's the thing, there are 3 of you staying in that hotel room. You should know pull-out beds are uncomfortable always. I'm not overly worried about the daughter's request, and she's autistic and has traumas. How your family handles that is entirely on you, as autism and trauma both are so very specific and nuanced to each individual person. You never should have booked a room with 1 bed and a pull-out, you should have booked a 2-bedroom. You said this happens on occasion, as it's something that your fiancé needs to deal with, but if this happens on occasion, then you should have had a 2-bed hotel room from the very get-go. This would have saved this entire issue of waking the fiancé, kicking anyone to the pull-out bed, and everyone could have been comfortable and gotten the rest they needed. I don't blame your fiancé for not being thrilled with what happened. I don't blame your daughter or you for her needs. You are, however, at fault for not getting a proper room for the 3 of you from the get-go. YTA, saying you're offering to get another room, which I assume is late at night since you're all in bed, would have been another annoying thing for your fiancé to deal with. I understand her saying, whatever, it's fine, and just going in the other room completely annoyed. If the main issue your daughter had in distress was being alone, then she should have accepted your offer to go sleep on the pull-out bed together. She didn't. Instead, she had you kick your fiancé out of bed. That's not okay. Your fiancé expressed how it made her feel, and you pretty much told her, my daughter is autistic, so your feelings don't matter, which is sucky. I understand caring for your daughter, but at some point you can't cuddle her. Is this how you plan to treat your partner forever? Your daughter will make unreasonable demands, and you'll automatically dismiss your fiancé?